Welcome to our Language of the Prophet series. We're going to be doing the first Aliya for this week's Parsha, which is B'shalach. B'shalach. When he sends. The first Aliya can be found in Shemot, chapter 13, verses 17 to chapter 14, verse 8. And I hope you guys can all hear me okay. Just please, let me make sure I have your chat boxes open. Hold on. Okay. Not seeing the chat box. Okay, there's that one. Huh. Yeah, there's sound. There's sound. There should be sound. Yeah, it's green on my side. It's green on my side. Okay, there's the chat box. And bring it out. Oh, it says there might be network connection issues, so I'm not sure. Do you hear the sound? Can you hear me? Okay. Doc says he hears sound. Okay, good. I don't understand. He keeps putting the chat box out of my view. This is a problem. They keep doing stuff with the version of the software that's over here, and it's messing me up. All right, now I get the chat box clear. Yay! All right. Oh, it disappears as soon as I minimize it. Look at that. Come out, separate. Now I got it. Okay, Baruch Hashem. All right. Sorry about that, folks. So, Exodus chapter 13, verse 17 through 14, verse 8. Sorry I didn't change the burning bush, but it's a pretty picture. We'll just leave it there, even though that's not part of this week's Parsha. So let's get started with verse 17. Vayihi B'shalach Paro et ha'am v'lo nacham Elohim derech eretz Pelishtim ki karov hu. Stop with our etmachta. So it was, or it happened, that when Pharaoh sent the people, so here's our direct object, this is a PL form, sent the people out, that God did not lead them. This is nacham. It's kind of hard to see. It's actually the verb nacha. It's a lamed hey verb, and this is the same verb that we have when you want to look for another place where God is leading. It's in the famous Psalm 23 that Yancheni, he leads me, lemaglan, to green pastures on the tracks in the for sake righteousness sake, all that stuff. Yeah, okay. On paths of righteousness for his great namesake. So, nacha is to lead, and in the mem, this is your pronominal suffix, nacham, Elohim, derech eretz. So, here we have a construct chain, and this literally means like a path of the land, right? Like path of the land. So it's a little bit obscure what this is talking about. Actually, the chain is longer. Path of the land, and then here's the end of the chain. Pelishtim. So the way, the road of the land of the Philistines, right? So it's saying that he didn't take them on the most direct path towards Canaan, right? Like where the Philistines would be. Ki karovu. Ki here is something more like though. Though ki sometimes functions for those of you who have studied Greek, like the particle de. Sometimes it's used just in connecting the thoughts. So, though karovhu. Karov is an active participle call from the verb karav. And karav, to draw near, to approach, right? Like a korban, an offering, is something which you bring near to Hashem. So though it, refers back to derech. So though karov hu, so here we go. Who is actually going over here? Pointing all the way back, the antecedent of this pronoun is derech. Even though the derech was near. Ki amar Elohim, because God said, Pen yinachem ha'am, birotam milchama, veshavu mitzrayim. So pen is one of these words I don't really like bringing it into English, because really the best translation for this is an older English word, lest, right? So it's kind of like so that not, right? So that, or so that this doesn't happen, right? So because if I do this, this might happen. It might happen that yinachem ha'am, that the people might, when being led, the people might birotam, they might see. So when they see, when being led, the people might see milchama, which is war or warfare. Veshavu, this is from shuv. It's a hollow verb. Shuv means to turn back, to return. And so shavu means, oi, my button got stuck. Shavu means they returned, right? It's perfect. And we have the vav conversive there, vav consecutive, how do you like to call that? So the time is actually different. It's actually the future. So they might return. Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim, of course, is Egypt, and the hey at the end is the hey locative, direction towards Egypt. So he's not even saying that they would return to Egypt, but they would turn around towards Egypt, right? He doesn't want to have to deal with that. Obviously, Hashem won't let them go back to Egypt, but he doesn't want to deal with the headache. He's just checking in chat. Oh, Liz doesn't have sound still. Yod Chet. Vayasev Elohim et ha'am derech hamidbar Yam Suf. It's changing color. If you're wondering what the delays are, I'm trying to change color in my pen. So this word, you haven't learned about this phenomenon yet. This is what we call a geminate. This is when you have, it's kind of an advanced verbal thing. When you have a verb and two of the letters in the verbal root are the same, like they're duplicates, that's a geminate. I guess like you could think of like Gemini, right? The Roman god with two faces. Like there's two of them, or they're twins, I guess. I mean twins, not two faces. I think I got it confused with Janus, and whatever. So savav is the verb. Samech, beit, beit. So if you wanted to look that up in a dictionary, you'd have to look up savav. Terrible bait. It's supposed to be a bait. So, vayasev is Elohim. So God caused them to circle, like savav is to go around. To go around. Who did he cause to go around? Et ha'am, the people. Derech hamidbar, the way of the wilderness, or the wilderness path, the desert path. Yam Suf, of to the Sea of Reeds. Okay, and I'm not exactly sure why it's not Yam Sufa or Yama Suf. Like we don't have a hey locative here, while we have one up here. I don't know what's happening. I would have expected there to be a hey locative here. Okay. Vayachamushim alu v'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. So chamushim, you probably know this word. Chamesh means 5, and chamushim is like, it's like groups of that, right? Like groups. Chamashim is 50. Chamesh is 5, Chamashim is 50, and Chamushim are groups of 50. So this is actually a common military arrangement in those days. So the idea is like, in case battle has to ensue, right? And it's interesting because elsewhere in the text, Israel is also referred to as Tzavaot, as God's tsevaot, as his legions, right, as his armies, his divisions. Sometimes in Leviticus that word is used that way. So, alu, a little hard to recognize because it's lamed hey, ayin, lamed hey. So this is one of your vocab words. You should know this. Allah, to go up. So it's ooh. So they're the ones who are going up. So they went up. Who's the they? V'nei Yisrael. Nice. Simple construct chain. Okay, it started to draw over here. Okay, got it. The children of Israel. May Eretz. So of course, just a quick refresher. This is Meen. Meen is how you say from. And if you want to attach it to a word, you can either attach it with a makef like that, or the noon can assimilate in the next letter, causing a strong dagesh. But Aleph is a gadol, he does not accept a doubling. So instead of me, Eretz, we get a compensatory lengthening of the chirik, the short vowel, to a long vowel tseri. So the noon tries to go in the Aleph, he can't, so instead he comes down here and causes that to be longer, if you want to think of it like that. May Eretz, Mitzrayim, another construct chain, from the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt. Any comments or questions so far? All right, Yod Tet. Vayikach Moshe et atzmot Yosef imo. So this word is lakach. And this is something you have to know about this word, lakach. The lamed disappears and gets represented there inside of the kuf. So lakach is he took. Yilakach means he will take or he takes. Va-yilakach means and he took or so he took. Or then. Probably and. And Moshe took, what did he take? Et atzmot Yosef. Oh, Lordy. I tried presenting from a tablet one time, and it was much nicer for drawing, right? But then you don't get the highlight over each word in the video that's being produced. So that's why I'm doing this just on a laptop. It's kind of hard to draw things straight. I'm not sure. Maybe there's more value in having better looking writings and pictures than the highlighted words. I'm not sure. So what do you take? Atzmot Yosef. The bones of Yosef. Im, with, O, with him. Ki hashbe'ah, hishbi'ah, et bnei Yisrael, lemor, pakod yivkod Elohim etchem, v'ha'alitem et atzmotai mizeh itchem. So 4, and here we have it's a little bit tough. It's a he-fill infinitive absolute, which you haven't learned yet, but you have learned about the infinitive absolute and what that does. So remember, when you have a verb, here's our verb, and you precede it with the same verb in the infinitive absolute, this strengthens the expression to mean like definitely or surely, right? Without a mistake, you will do whatever the verb is. Right? And I just have to mention real quick, there's a popular teacher in the Philippines, an American, and I won't say who it is, but there's this Jewish guy here who I watched some of his teachings before, and he says that like the translators are lying to you. Look, you have these words, they're twice in a row, and they don't translate both of the words into English. Why are they lying? And I'm not sure what to say, except it's just grammatical ignorance. This is the way the language works. Nobody's lying. You're not supposed to bring this word twice into your English, okay? Or into Tagalog or something. If you translate the word twice, unless the language you're translating into functions also this way. So you don't put it twice. You don't need to draw attention to it with a footnote that the word is twice. This is just the way that biblical Hebrew expresses that a verb will definitely be done. Interestingly enough, if you swap the order and put the infinitive absolute after the verb, after the conjugated verbal form, if I said hishbia hashbea, then usually, maybe like 80% of the time, it still is an emphasized action, but it implies temporal continuity and repetition. So that would mean so let me tell you first what the verb means. Hishbia means swear, right? Swear. Like to swear an oath, right? To make an oath. So, in the way we have it in the text here, hashbea, hishbia, this is the hefel, sorry, to cause to swear an oath. So, he made the Bnei Israel swear an oath, right? Definitely swear an oath, right? They indeed swore an oath. There's no doubt because it's here. If you moved it afterwards, it would mean he made the children of Israel continuously swear an oath, right? Every day I want you to say this oath, right? Like that. You see? If you swap the order. Not always, but a lot of times, that's the vast majority of the time, that's how the infinitive absolute functions. If it's before the word, it means definitely this thing will be done. Shemor tishmor et yom HaShabbat. You shall definitely keep the Sabbath day, right? Which you also could actually reverse that. You will continuously keep it, right? Like don't ever stop keeping it. So there's no kind of translator malice going on here. It's actually translator, what's it called? Merit? Like meritocracy. It's translator aptitude. It's translator awareness of the grammar. Okay, so this is what I mean when I tell you guys, be careful when you're seeking out teachers, because Hebrew is one of those things where so few people know it. And so if you just break through and you know a few, you can read, and you know a little bit to be dangerous, people will listen, and they will assume you know what you're talking about. And there's a lot of charlatans and fakers out there who they just are happy to mislead people with their knowledge for who knows whatever motives. So just be careful, okay? Make sure if you're learning from somebody that you know that they actually know what they're talking about. Because this is a fair look. We're on, lesson 28, and here we're talking about it, and we only meet once a week. So, all right. So someone should have had contact with that. Okay, Yod, okay, where are we at? Continuing on. Lamor, saying, Pakod yifkod Elohim etchem.
Infinitive absolute
Oh,
again.
go ahead. Yes?
Yeah, that's infinitive absolute again.
Yes. Yes, infinitive absolute, exactly. So there are two kinds of infinitives. Just as a review, guys, there is the infinitive absolute, and then there is the infinitive um, construct. So the infinitive construct is usually what we attach a lamed to. So, like for example, lishmor is to keep, right? Okay. So it's like the same as an infinitive in English, to do such and such. The way you look up a verb in English in the dictionary, like that. Okay. Everybody with me? Excuse me, sorry. My throat is okay, where were we? Please don't be shy. That's the first question we had so far. I thought we'd have more. You don't have to be shy about interrupting and asking. If you are wondering about it, then chances are other people are also wondering about it. All right, let's continue on then. So, saying God will, and here we have another infinitive absolute. Pakod yifkod. So yifkod is to visit. This is kind of a loaded word. It means so many things. For those of you in our kahal, you might remember like a year ago I did several slides just on this word, all the things it can mean. And this is something you should be careful about too. This is not a proper biblical hermeneutic to take a word and look it up and see all the meanings it can mean, and then say therefore it means all those things, right? Like I've seen lots of preachers do this where they'll be like, you know, Chalaf means change, and then they'll go on and it means this, and it means that, and it means that. So in this verse, when God says to do that, it's all of those things. No, it's not. It's one of those things in that particular context. Maybe two, if the poet or whoever is trying to make a play on words, the prophet. But it's not proper to say, look at these 8 meanings, or in the case of pakad, look at these 24 meanings, and it always means all of those things in all the verses. That is not a proper hermeneutic, okay? So it's important to be aware of the different meanings because, especially for you guys, because part of our plan is getting you all into the Reader's Hebrew Bible, which glosses all of the words that occur less than 100 times, right? So you'll be going through your Reader's Hebrew Bible, some of you who choose to do this method, and you'll know all the words. You should already know all the words in the Torah that occur more than 100 times. And then the ones that are less, they're going to be glossed, right, on the bottom of the page. And it's a good gloss. It's usually taken from Halot, right, which is the premier Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament, used by scholars, or sometimes DCH, which is another good one, 9-volume monster DCH, and sometimes BDB, rarely BDB. BDB is also okay, but they don't know about Ugaritic back then. They didn't know about it, so it's built on Gesenius' work, so it's lacking modern scholarship. But so they'll take the gloss that they think fits that verse, and that's great. This is great for the first time you're going to go through the Torah yourself in Hebrew and all that stuff, right? But you need to be aware if something doesn't feel right, they might have chosen the wrong gloss, right? So when they come to this part with pakad, they're going to choose one or two meanings for you, and they're going to present that to you. And they're coming from a certain denominational worldview, right? This is Zondervan Publishing, so it's going to be pretty standard protesting Catholic perspective. A friend of mine mentioned that they likes to call Protestants protesting Catholics. My friends, but I still like the idea because Protestantism comes out of Catholicism, which means that's what they were protesting, right? so there's still some of the baggage, right, that comes with Catholicism is still in that worldview, right? That's how you end up with a wicked person like Martin Luther being the hero of the movement, right? A murderer ends up being the hero of the movement, right? So a mass murderer. So yeah, go ahead. You want to say something, chime in, Doctor?
Yep. So pakad was also the same word used in Bamidbar when they are to number the people or
Yes.
take a census.
Yes, very good. And it's also the same word that's used when when Sarah is to be visited, like remembered is usually how it's translated then, remembered by Adonai or noticed by him. And it's also the same word that's used to appoint an officer militarily, right? Or to muster troops in general, to muster, right? So it has a whole lot of different meanings, this verb. It's really, really a rich verb, and it's worth doing a word study on it so that you can be armed with all of the different translations in case you're using a gloss like the Reader's Hebrew Bible or the Reader's BHS, which only glosses down to 70 occurrences, but is also very nice because you're going to be hit with a gloss, and maybe that gloss isn't correct, right? So even though you guys are getting into your Reader's Hebrew Bibles now, keep that in mind. If you come across something and you're confused, why would it have this interpretation? Just remember, there's still going to be theology that plays a role because look, they can't make the Bible 50,000 pages long, right? They can't put it all in there. To be fair, they're selecting what they think is most likely the translation choices there. Okay. So in this case, I think it's probably visit or notice, similar to the thing with Sarah, right? It's not mustering troops. It's not appointing someone to an office, right? Like a picadon is an appointment, right? Like someone who's been appointed for some kind of service. So infinitive absolute, definitely Yifkod Elohim. God will remember, will notice, will visit. Probably visit. Will visit etchem, you all. V'ha'alitem. So this is from Allah. Lamed Hey verb. The Hey is missing. Ah, it didn't draw it the way I wanted to draw. Just pretend it's a Hey. So Ayin Lamed Hey. To go up, this is a he fill binyan, so it's causative, right? So ha'alitem is perfect, meaning he caused you to ascend, right? He caused you to come up, i.e. like going up to the land of Israel, right? Going up to this higher elevation, like where Jerusalem is. But it's vav, consecutive, vav conversive. So instead it's, and he will, oh pardon me, and you all will, I'm sorry, I was mistranslating. The verb meaning is right. Instead of he, it's you all, tem. I wasn't looking at the tem. That was my mistake. So you all will bring up et atzmotai, my, plural, because it's not atzmoti, it's atzmotai, my bones. This is Yosef HaTzadik speaking. Mi zeh. It's funny how he talks, from this, right, meaning this place. Etchem, itchem, with chem, you all. Okay, any questions on that? It's exciting. You're getting into all the different binyanim. You're going to be really rocking soon. Verse Kaf. Vayis'u misukot vayachanu ve'etam Vikse Hamidbar. All right, so verse 20 there. This first word is a bit hard to recognize. So it's vayiseu, and it's actually from the verb that starts with a letter that's missing here. It's nasa, nasa, nun samech ayin. So it's a pay noon verb. But we didn't get a dagesh in the samech telling us that the noon went away. So that's why it's a bit hard to recognize this one. So nasa means to pull up stakes, like to pull stakes out of the ground. Like if you've ever gone camping before with an older tent, not one of these dome tents, and you have to hammer the stakes in the ground. Well, this is what ancients did with their tents. And so when it was time to travel, you'd pull the tent stakes up. So that's the etymology of this word. Even it comes to Akkadian this way. And so this means to travel. To travel. So the idea is, I think there might be an emphasis on the beginning aspect of traveling. You have to pull up tent stakes and go, right? And we have this famous thing we say in the synagogue when you open up the doors of the ark. This is where it's like it's got the Ten Commandments. It's got two tablets on it to remind us of the Ten Commandments. And on top it says Da milifnei ata omed, know before whom you are standing. And when we open up the doors and we take out the Torah scroll, everybody sings Ben Soa Aaron Vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai Vayafutzu Vayvecha Vayanusu Mesamecha Mepanecha. So it says like it's Ben Soa Aaron. Not Aharon, Aaron. I think I said Aharon just now for some reason. Ben Soa Aaron. Whenever the Aaron, that's the ark, would travel. So obviously the ark isn't pulling up tent stakes itself, right? So here we can see clearly how the verb has moved on from the literal meaning to pull out stakes, and at this time in standard biblical Hebrew it means to travel, right? So and Yiseu, so Yiseu means they will travel. Vayiseu, and they traveled. Misukot, or you could also be implying that they're leaving, right? They're pulling up the tent stakes. Mi, so again, this is mean, like we have up here. And here, the pointing works. We don't have to do a tricky aleph doesn't take dagesh, chirek length is tetzeri. Here it works just nicely. Mem, and then the nun, he behaves properly. He goes inside the samach with the dagesh, like we expected to. So no need to make the short vowel chirek into a long vowel seri. You guys see the differences? Just a reminder, because it's been a while since we talked about mem, mean. And mean means from, but you can also make it a contraction with the word misukot, right? So the syllable divides down the middle here. There's actually two samechs, right? Samech with a schwa. It's a silent schwa because it's after a chirek, so that ends the syllable. Syllable split, and then the next samech. And that's the one with the kibbutz. Mis Sukkot, from Sukkot, or Sukkoth, you'll see in English Bibles sometimes. And the reason they say Sukkoth, I like to do that also in my translations. I preserve, if it's a name, like if it's a place name or a person's name, if it's a proper noun, then I try to translate that or transliterate that using the ancient pronunciation because it's a place name. Why would you change the way the name is pronounced, right? Just because the language has mutated a bit in how we pronounce it, right? So in ancient pronunciation, a tav without a dagesh is a th sound. That's why we get English cognate Sabbath from Shabbat, because in Hebrew it's Shabbath, right? So, and that's why in my nusach, in the Ashkenazi, the German Jewish tradition, we would actually pronounce this would be pronounced as an S. When there's no dagesh, it's an S sound. And when there's a dagesh, it's a T. That's why in Yiddish, they'll say, Good Shabbos, right? Good Shabbos, right? Or Good Shabbos, depending on if they're Lithuanian or straight German Yiddish. So Sukkoth, from Sukkoth, Vayachanu ve'etam. Okay, so this one's, again, a bit hard to recognize. The verb is chana, and you guys have had this word. It's chet, nun, hey. Chana is to camp. Like, so they pulled up stakes. So there is kind of a feeling of they pulled up stakes, and then they put stakes back in. See? Pulled up stakes from Sukkoth, and then camped at Etham. Etham, th. Again, it's okay to say Etham. The way I've taught you the Sephardic pronunciation, because that's what Kalal Yisrael uses today. That's what's used in Israel, right? And so it's important for us to stand together, to do things similarly, this kind of stuff, and to be understood, right? When you if you, it's fine to try to learn the ancient pronunciation, and I think a couple of you bought the the text that I used with my rabbi when I studied biblical Hebrew. It's a practical grammar of classical Hebrew by Jacob Weingreen from Oxford, and it teaches the ancient pronunciation, which is fine because this is actually, if you do any work reading like scholarly journals, reading journal entries or this sort of thing about discoveries that are being made in biblical Hebrew, or relations to Ugaritic or this kind of stuff, they're going to use the ancient pronunciation when they transcribe the letters. So when you look up Vayachanu, it's going to be wa. This will be a W, like the ancient way. But for our class and synagogue purposes, kahal purposes, it's totally fine to just use the Sephardic. You don't have to say misukot. Misukot, it's fine. Because actually, if you start using ancient pronunciation when interacting with other people, sometimes there's extra confusion, and we don't need that, right? Best that we're all on the same page. Okay, we know it's Sephardic, Israeli, Hebrew, etc. Okay. Vayachanu, Yachanu is they will encamp, or they encamp. Vayachanu, and they camped at Etham, or Etam, at Etam. Biksei Hamidbar, at the edge of the wilderness, edge of the, and yeah, I I never really looked into this. I don't know why katseh, why we don't make that katset into a tav when it's in construct form. It's clearly a construct. Maybe it's appositive. It's an opposition. Every once in a while, instead of a construct, you have two words, and just because they're next to each other, you're supposed to understand there's a connection. Oh yeah, and we actually have tipecha here. This ta'am shows that it's read before this guy, that it's kind of separate, not read together. So, okay, I guess that's the answer to my own question there. At the edge, the wilderness, the desert is really what it says. Okay, any questions, comments?
The yak kana is to camp. So the preformative the noun form is makane, which is camp.
Yes, nice. That's the noun. That's right. Very good. And we get machanayim, right? The two camps, right? Meaning of the angel or the angelic host, and also of man, right? Like he calls the place machanayim, machanayim from machane. Yes, nice observation. Did everybody get what Dr. DeVera is talking about here? So the verb is chana, and from that we get a noun, machane. Oftentimes you can prefix a mem to a verbal form, and you get some kind of noun form. Yeah. Good. Okay. Any other?
Thank-
Sure. Any other comments or questions? Okay. And just one little extra note on that word. Machane can also be used militarily, right? So it can also mean like troops, right? If we say a camp, right? The enemy's camp. So it can be used with a slight different nuance there. All right. Okay. I animated in reverse order. Sorry about that. So, whoa. Come back. What is happening with that slide? Hold on. Okay, I think that's correct. Let's see. The computer's sometimes a bit slow, so it'll do something. Here we are. Okay. Yeah, I went too far. Yeah, verse Kaf Aleph. Sometimes I'm impatient and I tap again, and then it queues up all the taps and then does them all at once. Right? So that's what happened. Kaf Aleph 21. Vadonai holech lifneihem yomam. When you see these two like that, that's the Ashkenazi way of doing it. Ba'amuhu, Ba'amuhu danan, lanchotam haderech, Belayla, Be'amud eish leha'ir lahem. But Adonai, and Adonai, holech. So what is holech? What is happening with this? So we studied recently about the active participle.
Going.
Yeah, that's right. Very good. It's going or walking, either one, right? This is very interesting because it's quite anthropomorphic, right? Does a god walk? And I think there's some hints here that this might be the Malach Hashem, actually, the technical title for, I believe, and other theologians, it's not my invention, this to be the, the pre-incarnate form of Yeshua HaMashiach, although I might be a little bit off actually in this case because it does say tetragrammaton. So, but he can send his agent, right? He can send his son to be that aspect of God that's actually doing the walking. So, Vadonai and Adonai, Holech was walking. I'm going to say was because we've been in the past tense in English, and the active participle does not express time. Okay, so anybody listening to this, if you've studied, sometimes I get students who studied modern Hebrew, but they didn't study biblical Hebrew, and they get confused in the Bible, right? So over little things like this, because the grammar has different meanings now. It's been more Europeanized, and so they've learned holech is present tense. Okay, this is not present tense. There is no tense. There's no time implied by a participle. Okay, so don't make that mistake. So it can mean walking now, it can mean was walking, or will be walking. It depends on context. If you're already in past tense, then it's past. If we're already in future, then it's future. Okay, so we've been talking about past tense, telling the narrative. So, and Adonai was walking is probably what I would say. Lifneihem, before them. Yomam is an adverb. It means daily. This word confused a friend of mine who did modern Hebrew first, right? Because I did Yomam in some prayer, I said, and he's like, why Yomam? He was thinking it'd be a different word. That's a different way of expressing this in modern Hebrew. So Yomam means daily. Be'amud anan. So here we have a construct chain. Amud, even if you don't know this word, you can probably guess if you remember your vocabulary word, amad. So amad means to stand, right? Yeah, that's right. Yep. And I always like to use the example, if you can't remember, think of, I don't know, maybe I'm dating myself. Think of the basketball player Ahmad Rashad, right? He's very tall. And so amad is to stand. Amud, so it looks like it's formed from a passive participle, right? A passive PL participle. So amud would be like something that is standing. And really, it means a pillar. A pillar, right? You can have an amud on a house, or in the Psalms refers to it says that the pillars of the community have fasasu, they've disappeared, right? They've vanished. Meaning the great tzaddikim, the teachers who love Torah and all this stuff, they've vanished at the time that psalm was written. So it can be metaphorical or for real. So in Amud Anan, a pillar of Anan. Anan is smoke, right? And for those of you who paid attention to the drash on Shabbat, if not, please check it out on the Hebrew Literacy channel. When I'm looking in Revelation, I backtrace some of the Greek words, one of the Greek words to be Anan here. And so this is very reminiscent of actions taken by Hashem, right? So there's a smoke pillar. Lanchotam, to lead them. Again, this is nache, hard to see because lamed hey, right? The hey reverted back to ancient Hebrew tav, and then we have our pronominal suffix them, meaning them. And then so this was an infinitive construct plus the lamed to lead them. Haderech. Oh, go ahead. I think there's a comment. Okay. Haderech, the path, right? To lead them, so by inference, I suppose, on the path. I don't know why it's not al haderech or something like this, but it just literally says, like caveman speak, to lead them the path. Velila, and night, be'amud eish. Again, construct chain, a pillar of eish. And that's nice, right? So at nighttime, we want some illumination, so a pillar of eish, which is fire. Leha'il lahem. So this is related to, who can think of the noun that this is related to? Ha'il. What would that be related to? Vayomer Elohim Yehi Or. And God said, let there be Or. Or. Or is written like this. It's Aleph, if it will let me draw it.
To give light.
Yes, that's right. Aleph, Waw or Vav, Resh. And remember, Vav and Yod, they sometimes interchange places in the text because they're really not Vav and Yod, it's really Waw and Yud, right? And so they're closer than it seems. They're both acting as vowels sometimes. So Or means light. And Il with the Yod there, this is Hefil from the verb. Where was I? I lost my place. Oh, here. Hefil, it's to cause light, right? To shine, to illuminate. So, well, actually, Zarak is to shine. It's to illuminate, right? So, again, infinitive, but this time Hefil, like to cause there to be light, so to shine, to illuminate lahem for them. Lalachet yomam ve'layla. Lalechet, I do not expect you to know this. So, lechet is the infinitive construct of halach. Halach. So you just have to know this. It's kind of weird that it's this way. La, so to walk. So to alight for them for walking, or to walk, yomam, daytime, v'layla, and nighttime. Verse Kaf Beit. Lo yamish amud ha'anan yomam ve'amud ha'esh la yila. As Bessie correctly corrected me last time, it's a kametz here, so the schwa is vocal because this guy's in pause. Usually this word is spelled with patach, so then pardon, I keep saying yod, the schwa would close the syllable, we just say laila. But she's absolutely correct here because we have a long vowel lengthened from the etnachta, that makes this an open syllable now, and then the schwa is actually beginning the next syllable, so layala in this case. A nice catch there. Okay, so lo yamish, the reason I colored this, I cannot read this, and I think you'll be the same way when you guys are soon going to be going through the whole Hebrew Bible. When you go through it and you read Joshua, this just jumps out as lo yamush we have in Joshua. Shall not depart from you, this book of the Torah, right? It shall not depart ever from you, right? And so lo yamish, it's actually a cognate related to this, that it did not depart the what? The amud ha'anan. So now we have a definite construct chain. So we mark it. Amud, ha'anan. So it's definite because the hay is definite, right? The pillar of smoke or cloud. Yomam daily. The amud ha'esh. Now it's definite here. You guys see? This is a nice example of how definiteness works. Up here, they're indefinite. A pillar of smoke. A pillar of fire. The pillar of smoke. The pillar of fire. Layala. The night. Lifnei ha'am. Before the people. Here's a big Yod Dalet, so it's chapter 14. Would have been verse Aleph. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Then Adonai spoke unto Moshe lemor. So this is infinitive construct saying. Verse Beit. Daber el bnei Yisrael v'yashuvu. This is Hashem speaking. V'yachanu lifnei pi hachirot bein migdol uvein hayam. I want to change my color here. I got to drink a little bit of water. Bear with me just for a second. Okay. Daber, this is a command. This is an imperative.
Speak.
PL. Yep, go ahead. Is it? Speak. Speak unto Bnei Israel, another construct chain, the children of Israel. Veyashuvu. V'yachanu lifnei pi hachirot. That they should settle down and encamp before pi hachirot. And you guys see how I have that colorized a little bit there? Pi hachirot.
Yes.
See how it's gray? See how I have it as gray?
Ihayirot.
Yeah, yeah. So that I made it gray the way that it's done in the Reader's Hebrew Bible to show that this. I'm assuming they did this one. I didn't check, but they make all of the proper nouns that occur less than 100 times. They make them gray. so you don't accidentally try to translate it, right? It's okay to translate to try to see what the things mean, but sometimes it's Egyptian or something like this. So, and actually, I'm sorry, I sometimes mess up Yashav and Shuv. This is actually, they turn back. So they turn back, so they're kind of going, remember, they're going in a circular motion. And they encamped before this place called Pi Hachirot, Bein Migdol, which is between Migdol and between, we don't repeat it in English,
The,
Hayam. Yeah, the sea. Lifnei Baal
uh, uh,
Tzifon. Go ahead. Yes?
a question, sorry. So the Veyeshubu, the verb there is yashab or
Yeah.
shuv.
Oh, it's Shuv. It's Shuv. Yeah, I thought it was
It's shuv.
Yashav at first when I translated. I was too quick. I said Yashav, and then okay, wait, we have pardon me, the kibbutz here. So this is standing in for the missing shurik, shurik. Yeah, so I was wrong. It's Yashuvu means they will return, right? And it's actually with just of
Return.
force. So it's let them return, right? So this is and let them return and encamp before Pihachirot. Yeah, so sorry about that. Shuv. Shuv is the verb.
Yeah, because the English in NASB is to turn back. So I was wondering why it was to settle, because at first glance yashab really
Yeah,
means to dwell.
yeah, yeah, yep. Good catch. Okay. Uh, all right, continuing. Lifnei Baal Tzifon. Before Baal Tzifon. Again, it's another place name. It means like Lord of the North, or Lord of Tzifon, the Eretz Tzifon. Nichcho, which is opposite of O, of it. Tachalnu, you shall, this is again Chane, in camp. Big hay there. Al Hayam. And actually, I'm reminded of my friend Dwayne from Matzati.com, reminded me to make my hays bigger. Sometimes they're not that visible on devices, so let me try to make that a bit bigger. Chane. There we go. Chet Nun Hey. You shall encamp Al Hayam, by the sea. Verse Gimel. ואמר פרעה לבני ישראל, נבוכים הם הבארץ, הבארץ, בארץ. All right. And Pharaoh, or then, probably better, then Pharaoh said, interesting, he's not talking to the Bnei Israel. Why is it lamed there? Maybe it's concerning. Then Pharaoh said concerning, I'm going to go with that, the Bnei Israel, Nivuchim hem. And here's what this means. This is some buch. This is a peinun verb. Pardon me, this is a nifal verb, right? And it means to be agitated. And here it shows up in Esther this way. Or it can mean to wander around in confusion. And we actually have a cognate from this that starts with a mem, nabucha, which means confusion. So here's Exodus 14:3 and 1:18. These are the three places this shows up in the Bible in a nifal. So he's like, they're wandering around. Nivuchim ham. This is the nifal participle. Ham, they. Ba'aretz, in the land, right? Because they're going in a circle, right? They're kind of, not a full circle, but they're arcing around. Sagar alehem hamidbar. The desert is closing in on them, or is closed over with them.
Wait, Ba'amar is above conversive.
Yes.
So Pharaoh will say, and Pharaoh will say.
Right. Right. Good. Yep. And he will say, that's right. And Pharaoh will say, thanks. Keeping me on my toes today. Excellent. Very good. Okay, and I think this is the last part for the first Aliyah, so let's look here. This is Dalit. Vechizakti et lev paro, veradaf achreihem, veikaveda befaro uvechol chelo, veyadeu Mitzrayim, ki ani Adonai. All right. So he's telling Moshe what he's going to do, right? And just like Doc pointed out, we have a Vav conversive here, or Vav consecutive. So this perfect is going to be interpreted in the future. So here we have a PL form. Chazak is to be strong, but this is chizakti, which is I will strengthen. I will, there's a stronger meaning to it. So, and I will strengthen it, lev paro. Here we have a construct chain, the heart of Pharaoh. In other words, his resolve, his mind. V'chadaf achreihem. And, so again, perfect becomes future. He will pursue, he will chase after them. V'ikavada, and I will, this is nifal, it's hard to see, there's a nifal here. That's inside the kaf.
To be happy.
Yep. Literally to be heavy or to be honored, right? Like to be honored, like to be glorified, right? So in ancient Hebrew, it would have been in kaveda, but it's actually ikaveda, and there's a hey here also. So there's a hey. So this is the cohortative form as well. So it's like a little exclamation point. Like I will definitely be glorified. Indeed, I will be honored befaro, by Pharaoh, like because of his actions. Uvechol chelo, and because of all of his chayil. So chayil, this is construct form of chayil. Chayil, like if you've read Mishlei, the woman of valor is Eshet Chayil. Oh, maybe that's a song I should teach you guys sometimes. That'd be a good way to memorize that chunk of scripture. It's Eshet Chayil mi yimsa verachok mipninim michla bat tachba leba'ala v'shala lo yechsar gemalto toy ve'lo yira kol yemei chayecha dashat zemir fishtim. Anyway, okay, go on and on. It's so catchy, the melody, it's hard to stop. But Eshet Chayil, the woman of valor. So, but when it's relating to men, it's his host. It's his army, and there's the his, referring to it's belonging to Pharaoh. His chayil. It can also mean wealth, right? But we're not talking about his wealth, obviously, in context. V'yadeu Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem. Then Egypt, they will know, yes, that ani, I, and you have to insert m in English to make it make sense. Yod he, waw he. V'ya'asu chen. And they did like that. They did such. Verse. Go
A
ahead.
question again. Yeah, the veike de ba. Yeah, is it a bab conversive?
Not really. Yeah,
Is
good question. Not really. Because this is the cohortative imperfect already. And so
yeah.
so it already
Okay.
means I will be. It's a good question. Yep. Not every time you have a vav will it be vav conversive. Very good question. Yep. So and it literally says and let me be made heavy by Pharaoh and by his host, right? Let me be honored, right? Meaning by their actions, by their how he's going to defeat them. But yeah, asuchen, and that's how it happened, and that's what they did. Verse Hey, Vayugad lemelech Mitzrayim, ki varach ha'am. Okay, this is a peinun verb, so it's nagad, to tell, to relate, right? This is like at Pesach we have the Haggadah, the retelling, like talking about the story. It's the thing that's told, the thing that is nagaded, if you will. So this is actually this particular form here is not a form that you've learned. You see the little kibbutz underneath? This is a hofal binyan, right? So it's like caused to be told, right? So it's a little bit awkward in English. So vayugad lemelech, and it was, we'll just say, reported to Melech Mitzrayim, king of Egypt, the king of Egypt. Ki varach, varach means to flee. That ha'am had barach, that the people had fled. Vayehafech levav paro, va'avadav el ha'am vayamuru, mazot asinu, ki shilachnu et Yisrael me'avdenu. Yeah. Flip flopper. Like a lot of politicians, he's a flip flopper. Okay. So this word here, it's a nifal form, and it's passive. You can't tell because there would have been a noon here, right? There would have been a noon, but the noon can't put a dagesh in the hay. So instead we lengthen this vowel here. So that's how you know that Sari is characteristic in imperfect form, that it's a nifal binyan that's happening there, if we've lost the noon, like in this case. Okay, so vaye hafech, means to overturn, to turn around. This is the same verb that's used in Gan Eden, talking about the sword that would turn in all different directions. So Nifal's not always passive. Sometimes it's got kind of a reflexive sense to it, like in the case of that sword, it turned this way and that, right? With anything that has to do with motion, you end up like going around in different directions. So in this case, it's Levav Paro construct, the heart of Pharaoh. So the heart of Pharaoh was overturned, so to speak, his mindset, and that of Avadiv, his slaves or his servants, El Ha'am, towards the people, meaning regarding Israel. Vayamu, and they said, Mazot, what is this? Asinu, that we did. This is from Asa. Trying to make a big hay there. It's not that big. Sorry. Asa, which we have done. Ki shilachnu. Shalach, you guys know, this is the PL form. So shalach means to send, and shileach means to send out, right? To banish. That we have sent out at Israel. May from Ovdenu, from serving us. Verse Vav.
Question.
Okay, sure.
I don't know if this is going to make sense, but I'm always stuck up with the Vayomeru, and they said, we always have a hard time conjugating this. It doesn't tally with the regular standard chart of the cal imperfect conjunction.
Right. Because you're
So
missing.
I don't know where.
Okay. So here's why. This is what's called a pay aleph verb. And so when you have an aleph at the beginning of a verb, the vowels are a bit different for that verb. Okay? The aleph is
Also,
the aleph is changing a little bit, the pointing.
okay, so we haven't learned that yet, right?
Right. Haven't learned it yet. Haven't learned it yet.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's fine.
Good
That's
question.
fine. Okay.
Yep. Not strange at all. It was right on. It's a very good question. Yeah, and
I'll shove it away out of my table yet.
fair enough. Fair enough. And it's a little bit
Okay,
strange.
good.
There is something
Thank
strange
you.
about this word too. Now that you mention it, I would have expected a schwa here. I'm not sure why it's missing the schwa. Why that's if that's just a computer issue with the computerized text or something. I might check and see with Leningrad Codex to see if that's there or not. So that's a bit strange, right? We would expect to have a schwa here, even though it's a pay aleph verb. Vayol meru, right? Okay, nice. Any other questions?
No more. Thank you.
Okay. All right, continuing on. Verse Vav, that's 6. Vayeh so et richbo. That's the end of our clause. So asa, this word actually is like to bind, to tighten ropes on something. Um, we see this when Yosef is enslaved, right? But it also when you're dealing with like animals, then it can be used. We have another word for to saddle, but it can be used to prepare the horse or to prepare the chariot, right? Like you're attaching the chariot to the horse is what's implied. So vayet so, and he attached. Oh, and here's a good example. Look, you've got this goal here we wouldn't usually expect. It's because of the aleph. This is just a call form, but the aleph is impacting the vowel sounds around it. So, and he bound richbo. A rechev is a chariot. Chariot. He bound his chariot, which is interesting. We get um, in Israel today. There's another word for chariot also in the Bible. There's markava, right? And markava also means chariot. When you see it like this, richbo, it's more like it's more than just one. It's like the abstract concept of chariots. like he and also his soldiers. It's not just Pharaoh going out by himself with a lone chariot, right? So markava is the usual word we have for just chariot, but in modern Hebrew it means tank. Interesting, right? So there's actually a model of tank made in Israel called the Markava tank, and that's the name of that tank. So it's the chariot tank, and it means tank. All right. So his
A
chariot.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to the previous word, vayasor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, if I follow the standard, could I say that's again the pay aleph verb that we haven't learned because under the yod is a
Yes.
segol because With our okay, good, settled. Fine.
Absolutely. Yep, you got it.
Show the way.
Yay.
Okay.
So the weirdness at
Thank
least
you.
has a category. We can put it under, crazy pay
Okay.
Aleph stuff. Good.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. Ve'et amo, and his people. Lakach, he took im o, with him. Verse Zion. Vayikach, shishmeot vechev bachur. Wait, tone deaf today. Maybe I shouldn't sing. And he took 600, I think it's because I'm sick, 600 rechev. So, abstract concept of chariot. Bachur. So more like maybe charioteers here is probably what it is. Charioteers, like guys riding the chariot. Bachur is a young man, right? Like a young marriage-aged man. So good for war. Also the chol and every rechev Mitzrayim, and all rather than every probably than all this construct chain, all or each rechev of Mitzrayim, each chariot of Egypt. Veshalishim.
A question.
Short.
Okay, sorry. I'm going back
No
again
problem.
to Vayikop. Okay, that we haven't learned yet, right?
Vayikach, this one?
The first word. Yeah.
Okay.
Because if it comes under the regular imperfect conjugation, it doesn't tally with our chart. Is it because of the valve there?
Yeah, this is a special word. So lakach, it kind of has an irregular behavior. Okay? Lakach, you just have to learn, and it's good that this is a very common word, so you'll see it a lot. Lakach, to take, or we learn from Ugaritic, it also means to buy, right? Which is really beautiful in the story when Esau, the wicked Esau, he admits, he says, first, my brother, lakach et bechoati, he bought my birthright, which is the Ugaritic meaning of lakach, to bought, and now he's lakach gam et, he's also taken now barchati, my blessing, right? So he admits in his language, he first bought it from me, so he admits it was sold. So it's kind of interesting. So lakach, to buy, to acquire, to take, and the lamed oftentimes disappears. He's just a bad behaving lamed. But at least when he disappears, he'll leave a hint with a dagesh in the kuf, unless it's the imperative. If it's the imperative, you don't even get that hint. It'll say kach na. For example, Hashem speaking to Abraham in the Akedah in Genesis 22, he says, kach na et bincha et yachidecha asher havta. Take now your son, your unique one whom you love, i.e. Yitzchak, right? Okay, so does that help a little bit? That's what's happening there with lakach. He's just special.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Actually, it's kind of similar to a peinun if you think about what happened. So just like we would have had if it was a peinun, vayin kach. If it was not kach, we'd expect it to behave this way, right? The nun would go inside the kuf, and then that's it. So the lamed, in this particular verb, he's behaving like a nun in a peinun verb. Same thing. Oh yeah, I just realized. I'm glad you asked. The same like natan. Natan means to give.
Yes, we have a hard time with Natan too.
Yeah, it behaves the same way. So with natan, but with natan, at least there's a category. We call it pei nun verbs, verbs that begin with nun. So with natan, if I want to make it imperative and say give, and if I'm talking to a man, I say tain, tainly, give to me. I don't say natanli, I say tainly, give to me, and the nun falls away. Same thing with lakach, kachna, take now et bincha, your son, right? So it seems like lakach is behaving like there's a whole category. So there's pei aleph, there's pei nun. Yeah, those are all coming up in more detail, but it's good. You guys are being exposed to it now. It'll be cake when we hit the full grammar rule. Okay?
Okay.
Vishal,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Rab,
Yes.
is there specific chart or ruling for those special verbs?
Yes. I can produce one if you like. Or if you have
Later on, you will teach
yeah.
us.
Yes, there's a chart. There's several organizations you can look up pay noon verbs, and they'll have like a list of the paradigm, right? Pay aleph verbs, lamed guttural, lamed hey, right? Like this. And remember the letters when we say pay noon, lamed hey, exactly all this stuff. It's from the word verb in Hebrew, which comes from the word pa'al, to do. Pay, ayin, lamed. And so I use the traditional Jewish grammar way of referencing these. Some grammars, they'll call it pei 1, meaning it's in the first position, right? Or like uh, hey 3, meaning it's in third position. But the Jewish terminology is pretty common. So pei, this means the first position. So if I say it's a pei noon verb, what I'm saying is that the noon is where there's the pei in the word pa'al, right? So for example,
Oh.
you see? So for example, Natan, the noon is where the pei is. You see? It's like an index into the verb. So he's a pei noon verb, right? If I take the verb like we had before, we had earlier today, we had chana to camp. Go ahead.
Kaya ngayon, wala, puro online din kami. Eh,
Chana.
mag,
Okay, I'm going to have to mute.
sama-sama.
I think there's a phone by accident on. Let's see. I'm just going to get mute off for a
Hana.
second. Feel free to speak up, okay? Okay, so this one is a lamed hey verb, you see? Because the hey is in the lamed position, right? So, pei noon, lamed hey. So when you hear me saying those terms, that's what I mean. That's the traditional Jewish way of referring to the binyan, the way the binyan is behaving, right? What letters we have in the shorish, in the root. But in other grammars, they sometimes call it first position, second position, third position. We say pei position, ayin position, and lamed position. Okay, you guys got it?
Got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, Yofi. Okay, so continuing, let's see. Now here's a weird word. The shalishim, this is a little controversial, this word. Um, because, well, some historians think that Egyptians did not have this kind of chariot, but I'm not sure. So I'll just go with the way that I understand it. The root is shalosh, which is three, right? Like titla, right? It's three. And so the idea is you had some chariots in the ancient world that was a one-man chariot. You had some that had two men, and some that were big, super chariots, and they had three men on there. One is like an extra guy, one shooting arrows, the other's handing the arrow, or he's ready with a short sword in case someone gets too close, right? So it's a massive three-man chariot. So he brought all the chariots of Egypt, even Shalishim, even those big ones that you're fearful to hear about when you're going into battle with your stupid little short sword, right? And they're coming with three guys on a chariot. Al Kulo. All Kulo, like all of his. It's kind of, it's a bit strange how it's phrased in the Hebrew, but Kulo is like all, and then O is his, all of his. So all is like with his things. It's like you see, it's kind of awkward. It's a bit awkward. So you'd have to massage it in English to get at what's happening, but you can understand the concept. He brought all the young guys who are charioteers. He brought all the chariots of Egypt, and this vav I would translate as even the ones that were took a three-man crew, together with all that was his, like his entire armed force, it sounds like, is coming. I think that's what it's expressing there. Okay? All right. So,
The NSB translated the Shalushiv as officers.
interesting. Well, I know one of the possible attendants is an adjutant, right? That's one of the opinions. It's like an adjutant, like so it could be. Although the usual word we'd have for officers would be sar, like prince is used for officers, or we have another word. What is it? It's the same word as eunuch is used for officer. We see it applied to Potiphar. I can't remember. Oh, sorin. So I'll have sorin is another word for officer, and there's one more. Yeah, I kind of think officer might not be correct, but they could be right. Maybe that's what it means. Maybe the opinion of it being the third man on the chariot could be wrong. Yeah, there's room for disagreement there. I guess officer actually even works a little bit with Hebrew parallelism if you're going to say the focus is then on Bechor. So he took the young guys and also officers, possibly. The problem is that this word just doesn't occur too much, so it's a little bit controversial. But I can see why they would go with officer. Usually when we have a word with an obscure meaning, we take a look to see if parallelism helps a little bit, right? So for me, the parallelism, I was focusing on Rechev, right? He's taking the normal chariot, and he's also taking the Shalishim. So it seems like RSV, from what you're saying, they translate as officers. That means they're choosing to focus on Bachur, on the young warriors, as well as the officers, right? Because the young guy's not an officer. He hasn't proved himself yet in battle. So Either one you can justify, I think. Yeah, nice. Any other comments or questions? I guess one thing that biases me against officers is the root being shalosh. You see, like a third, right? So, unless that's used in some other way, yeah, interesting. Okay, chet, verse 8. Vaychazek Adonai et lehev paro melech Mitzrayim vayirdof acharei bnei Yisrael. So here we have a PL form of chazak. Yechazek means he strengthens, or he will strengthen. So you'll find that PL sometimes is used causatively. So, and then we have Vav consecutive. Then Adonai strengthened Pharaoh's mind, literally his heart. The king of Egypt, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt's mind, his resolve. Vayildof acharei b'nei Yisrael. So, Yildof means this is call. This is not a PL. The dagesh here is because this is begad kefat letter, and the syllable divides here. So this is a silent schwa. So there's no vowel sign. So the dalet gets his dagesh lene, right? His weak dagesh. Vayildof. So Yildof, he will pursue. Vayildof, and he pursued. Then he pursued, or and he pursued. Go ahead.
After,
Yes,
after
after acharei the bnei
the
Yisrael.
sons of Israel.
Exactly. Uvenei Yisrael. Actually, let's do it this way. Uvenei Yisrael yotzeim beyad harama. And the bnei Yisrael yotzeim. This is from Yatzah, to go out. This is where we get the word for Exodus, as this translates into Greek. Yotzeim, they went out biyad Ramah, with a high hand, is what that literally says. With a yad Ramah, with a hand held high, is kind of what's implied. Okay, any comments or questions as we're finished with the first Aliyah? Yofi, very nice. Interesting Aliyah. I like doing it with you guys. It's nice because you have some good comments and questions and challenges. It's nice to wrestle with the text together. But you can see, right, how we come up sometimes with various interpretations. And sometimes it's just up in the air which way to go on the interpretation. So this is, I kind of am hoping that you all are starting to see, to not feel so confident about what your English Bible says, right? And I'm not saying about the gist of things. Of course, the important messages all make it out, how you achieve salvation, all this sort of stuff. But regarding, like this one, like we're talking about, is this an officer or is it like a big chariot with a third guy on there, right? Is it that's, you know, because when a translator, usually it's a committee, they'll debate and they'll make a choice, right? They'll finally make a choice, but you oftentimes don't know that there was a consideration, that there's something else that was on the table, and maybe it lost by 40% in the vote, right? And so people, when they hold their English Bible in their hands with the nice cowhide leather or whatever, right, and the gilded gold pages, and they feel so certain, there's a certainty that this is totally correct, right? When really, and I don't mean to chip at that, but you guys are all advanced students of the Bible. But really, there should be a little bit of uncertainty, right? So that whenever you're reading in a translation, if you feel like something seems a bit off, that's a great time to dig in the Hebrew and look and see, well, what does it really say here? And it's not that there's some sinister intent on the part of the translators. It's just they had to put something down, right? And they can't explain all their translation choices, or your Bible's going to be twice as thick, right? So that's how that goes. Okay, so we're done with the first Aliyah. Oh,
Gabi,
go ahead. Yes.
yeah, sorry. Going back to verse 7, please.
Mm-hmm.
Rekeb Bakur.
Mm-hmm.
What is Bakur, please? Rekeb, go to
Sure. A
7.
Bachor is a young man, a young
Sorry.
marriage-aged man, a young man. So he might be 16 years
Oh,
old, he might be 17, right? Yosef was a Bachor when he was sold into slavery. He was 17 years old, right? He's a Bachor. Yeah, it's the counterpart to, oh, I'm having a brain cloud. Oh.
I think I thought
I thought it was infinitive. I thought it was participle. AO.
Ah, the pattern, right? Oh, yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's nice that you recognize that pattern. Yeah, very nice, very nice. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, sure. I actually, it could be, it could be. So a bachur, it's often used to describe a young man, right? And like a fighting age man, something like this, or a man who, who basically he's not a kid anymore, but he's got a lot of energy, like a teenager, or maybe even 22 years old, like in that range. And this is usually used in in comparison to for example, a young maiden, right? So this is the equivalent of if you had a word for young maiden but for a man, like a young bachelor or something like that, is a bakur, right? And but you're absolutely right. The vowel pattern here, the vowel pattern, this could be a participle, meaning chosen, right? Like of choice. So you could actually make a point for this. You don't need to be sorry. You could make a point that this was rechev bachur, like chosen chariots, right? Like the idea that they're somehow better than other chariots. Okay? If you treat it as a passive
Okay.
participle instead of a noun. Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, actually, the NASB translated just the Bakor as select chariots
There you go.
or choke.
Beautiful. Yeah, see, so there you go. So it's a possible translation choice to translate it like that. Yeah. Very interesting. And actually, that would make more sense if they make that choice to treat this word as select chariots, as like grace, I guess, as great chariots, instead of charioteers who are young men. Then that would make a lot more sense in their parallel choice to make shalishim something like officers, right? Instead of, I should check the Septuagint. I'm curious what the Septuagint says for this word shalishim. That'd be neat to see how the Greek and the Targums how they translate it. Yeah. Yeah, so you guys are seeing, right, that there's sometimes you have choices you can make in the translation. And actually, we have a lot of nouns that are formed by originally taking a participle from Hebrew and then bringing that participle across into being an actual noun. Just it becomes used as a noun, like the person who does such a thing, right? So I bet if we dig on this bachelor thing, the idea is like it's a choice man, right? It probably in ancient Hebrew or Old Semitic, it probably meant something like a choice man, right? Like when the virgin is about to marry and she's looking who to select, she's not selecting the 80-year-old guy, right? She wants the bachur. The choice man is the guy who's got the energy and he's young and he can work and all that kind of stuff. So you can even kind of see how it might have developed etymologically to have that meaning. Yeah, nice. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, because the verb bakar is means to choose,
Yes.
and probably bakor could also mean select.
Yes. Yep. So you can see how that could develop into that noun. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Like there's even okay, I just decided to look up now, and I'm gonna look up. If I look in Halot, it says in Akkadian, it's related to this Akkadian word, Bahulati, which means fighting men, troops. Only in Sargon and Sennacherib is there differentiation from Ba'ulatu, subjects, right? So usually in Akkadian, which is a related Semitic language, um, this word they believe derived from Akkadian meant fighting men, right? And so, but I can totally see the perspective in RSV going with making this as the passive participle of Bachar, chosen to go with that meaning. Both are valid translations. Yeah. Good. Any other comments or questions?
Rabbi,
Yes.
um, in verse 8, the first word is vaikasek.
Yes.
Um, the root word is kasak, meaning strengthened.
Yes.
I am looking at Bible Hub, and it says here hardened.
Yeah. So
So there are many kinds of this kind of things, the same word, and then in another verse, it's another meaning.
right.
How will we know the difference of all these things? How do we come to that point that we will be able to identify
Right.
all
So
of these
okay.
things?
Okay, so let me restate your question. The question is based on a gloss that's given at Bible Hub, right? And I'm assuming you
Yeah.
didn't drill down to the Gesenius, right? Did you look at the Gesenius
The
definition? The Gesenius definition, the picture, like at Bible Hub, when you oh I'm sorry I'm thinking Blue Letter
yes.
Bible, Blue Letter.
We're looking at the Hebrew, WLC Hebrew
Yeah, I don't know what that like.
translation. What we use, that's what we use for our study.
Okay. So here's what's happening.
And then we
It,
encounter a lot of these kind of things in in this kind. So
So here's what's
how
happening.
do we
Oh,
study?
okay. It's a great question. It's a great question. So here's the thing. It means to strengthen, right? Chazak means to be strong. That is the meaning. You can go to the bank
Yes.
on that. Okay. So it doesn't mean to harden. Okay. But what's happening is you want the Bible to sound good in English, right? You don't want it to sound strange. And
Yes.
oftentimes when you translate literally directly from Hebrew into English, it's going to sound a bit strange, right? So if I said Adonai made strong the heart of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, it doesn't sound good, right? And
Yeah.
we already have an idiomatic understanding in English for this. Like he's got a hard heart, right? Meaning he's stubborn, right? So what's happening is they're trying to be more idiomatic with it, bringing it into English. There's nothing wrong with the way they translated it. But the verb itself, if you look it up, chazak means to be strong. Alternatively, it can also mean to seize.
Yes.
That's another meaning, to seize, like to grab onto something, right? But more commonly, it's to be strong. And then the PL is to strengthen, right? And so the reason they're just making a choice. It's just they're making it sound better in English. There's nothing wrong with the way they're translating it, but it's less literal than what we're doing right now. And it's fine to be less literal because they're still getting the exact idea across, right? I mean, if I tell you the way I translate this, Adonai strengthened Pharaoh, the king of Egypt's resolve. That's how I translate it in my Exodus Look Again. Okay? So, so in my book on Exodus. So unpublished, so don't feel bad if you don't have it. So that's my way to put it across to people that it has nothing to do with his heart, right? In English. Because when people think of heart in English, they're like, oh, emotions and Cupid shooting people in the heart, and that's where your feelings are. And so he strengthened his heart means like he's doing something with his feelings. And so I like to get away from that and hammer home that heart has nothing to do with heart in Hebrew, unless you're saying you shot him in the heart with an arrow or something, right? The heart is the seat of the intellect. It's the willpower instead, right? So that's why I like to translate it strengthens resolve. But I'm doing the exact same thing with heart that the translation you guys are reading is doing with strengthened, right? They're saying hardened because they're keeping hard in their translation. Harden the heart, which has a similar understanding in English as strengthen his resolve. I understand heart to mean mind, right? In Hebrew, it's idiomatic from mind. So the Pharaoh's mind, in other words, his thought process, his willpower is being strengthened, right? Do you understand? So you're going to have your own style and your own personality and artistic flair. If you do actual translation, you're going to inject that in the text, and it's fine. Because really, is there a difference between what I'm saying, that Adonai strengthened his resolve, and what they're saying, Adonai hardened his heart? Right? We understand both things, it's the same meaning. I'm just trying to get away from the literal heart because I think I have kind of a consistent way of translating that as mind because I'm trying to, with my teaching, I'm trying to undo some of the programming I think with people have with making certain Hebrew words too literal into English, right? And
Yeah.
the other translators, they're just focusing on maybe they like the way it sounds to say a hardened heart, okay? But we have other words for to
Mhm.
harden if you want to be literal. So you don't have to worry about that. You're going to get all that. The main thing is that you understand what you're reading. That's what we're going for. And if you choose a different word, but there's two ways to translate Bibles. There's different types of translations. There's a dynamic translation, right? A dynamic translation is where it's thought for thought. And you go through and you pick out the phrase and you get that thought translated as best as you can in the target language, right? And then there are more literal translations, which try to be more literal to the text, right? And they're going to say, harden his heart, because strengthen his heart sounds a little bit strange in English, right? It's not, so that's fine to change that one word because they want to keep heart. They feel like that's important to bring across into English. It's a choice, but ultimately you don't have to worry
So
about.
that is why,
Go ahead.
yeah.
That is why you don't like us to have a transliterated version.
Mm. Right, I think you mean interlinear, right? Yeah, I don't want you to have an interlinear.
Yeah, interlinear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I'm even technically against a parallel version, like, but it's
it's
okay if it.
confusing us.
Yeah, yeah, because that's right. I don't want you to be confused by the choices they make and the glosses that they make, and I also don't want you to become dependent on looking at the interlinear entries underneath the text or above the text, however they do it, right? Because it's like having training wheels, and then you get addicted to it, and you won't be able to lose it later, and really enjoy yourself swimming in the text, which is that's the hope that's coming up, right? That you're going to enjoy the text really and just be in it. And I don't want you to miss out on that moment when the first time you're reading and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm not translating even. I'm just understanding what I'm reading. It's a wonderful moment. So I want you to have that. Yeah. So it's a good question. You don't need to worry. You're doing fine. As long as you have the vocabulary and the grammar, then you'll understand. Bring it into another language for somebody else, that's a whole nother issue. Deciding to make poetic choices, if you're going to translate dynamically or literally, all that sort of stuff. But the main thing is, as long as you understand what it means, then you can use your own words to explain it to somebody else, like if you're teaching or something. Okay?
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
sure. Nice question. Okay, any other questions? Okay,
So
then.
in
Yes,
yung Vayikazek was what Ate Bessie was saying. This is in the PL form.
yes,
So that is a the one receiving the action is Pharaoh, and the
yes,
one doing the action is Hashem.
yes,
So yeah, because yeah, as what Ate Bessie was pointing out, because we might be as like what Paul was discussing in Romans, uh, is it chapter 9, that about the question of man's will and God's sovereignty, that will you blame Pharaoh for doing what he did, since God is the one causing the action on the
right,
part of Pharaoh, something like that.
right. But you remember, so okay, so look, this is the PL, and PL sometimes, instead of just being an intense meaning, the logical progression to intensify meaning means to cause a thing to happen. Okay? So in this case, with this verb, the intense PL meaning means to cause to be strong. So in other words, to make firm or to make strong, to strengthen, right? To strengthen. Sometimes it can mean to restore the strength, right? In different contexts. In post Torah, in the Nach, it can mean like to restore the strength of something, right? But not in the Torah. In the Torah, it's not used that way, right? And we're focusing mostly on Torah, right? It can also end up being to encourage, like but again, that's post Torah. So for Torah, it's to strengthen when it's in the PL, to strengthen, or to make firm, right? So I think that make firm really goes well together with the idea, if it's the lev, the heart of someone's resolve, strengthening their resolve. And it's a nice thing, the whole debate about free will and stuff, but I think I handled that pretty well last time with Rabbi Rashi's take on it. I think that's a good solution. Because that used to bother me too. Like, wait a second, how is Pharaoh going to be accountable for these new actions? No, and yes. So all that God is doing by strengthening his resolve is giving him the chance to do what he wants to do and already has done anyway. So he's already guilty of rampant rebellion on his own, and now his heart would melt after seeing such miracles. And just like the angels, Chazal teachers, who stand before Hashem are unable to rebel because they see his might right in front of their eyes, so too at this point the Pharaoh, he sees God's might, because you remember, these miracles, they happened over a long period of time. It wasn't like you see in the movies, like Prince of Egypt or something. Bam, one plague, bam, one plague, bam, one plague, bam, one plague. Over several months, the process of emancipation of the slaves happened. And so you can kind of see how a king could rationalize, nothing's happened for a few months now, right? There's trees growing in the field already again. Oh yeah? Well, now I'm going to send the Orev. I'm going to send the swarm, right? So because of that, we can kind of understand how he's able to harden his own heart later. But near the end, the death of the firstborn, every household in Egypt mourning, Who could stand against that? And so just as an angel who stands before God in the heavens is unable to rebel at that moment. He can rebel later when he's on earth, but when he's before the throne, he's seeing God's majesty, his glory, he's unable to. He cannot do what he wants to do. And so Rashi explains that God enables the Pharaoh to do what he wants to do. He strengthens his resolve so he can do what he really wants to do. He really wants to stick it to the Bnei Israel and murder us all. That's what he wants. That's his heart of hearts. That's what he wants to do. And so God says, okay, instead of making your will melt before my mighty acts, I'm going to give you the strength to be a superhuman and do what is in your heart. Do what you want to do. So that's why he strengthens his resolve. He didn't give him the resolve. He didn't set his mind. He strengthened his mind instead. You see? That's why it's not an issue of free will. He's not, and that's part of the problem with saying harden his heart. Why I don't like that in translation. Harden his heart almost sounds like he's causing him to be obstinate. Whereas if you say he strengthened his resolve, which is really what's happening, right? He's strengthening his mind. He's allowing him to separate himself from the emotions of the thing and rely on his mind, what he wants to do anyway in his own thought life, and that is to rebel, to murder Israel. That's what he wants to do. That's what his ancestors did, and he wants to do it too. Does it make sense?
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
cool.
you.
Sure. Beautiful. Nice discussion today. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to proceed so we can get to, I have a little bit of new material for you.